I still cannot believe that Andrew Luck is the first general manager to fire a head coach in college football. That's a crazy sentence. It's 100% accurate. And you know what? We all better get used to it. The interesting thing, though, before I touch on David Bailey, who's going to change somebody's program here in the next year defensively, and a couple other guys perhaps as well from the Cardinal, I don't think every GM is going to have this level of influence. I think certain GMs can. Andrew Luck is the biggest face of Stanford football. I mean, what he did in college, what he did in the NFL, his whole aura, football IQ and acumen. There's nothing about him that isn't good for Stanford to have him around. How many other GMs in college football right now, not talking in the future, but right now, could legitimately pull the trigger and almost unilaterally, at least that's how it seems, fire the head coach? Yes, there was an off-season or off the field scandal component in the report about, abusive behavior by Coach Taylor. That's a contributing factor. Is it the only factor though? Or did Andrew Luck come in and say, I want to hire my guy who shares my vision for the Stanford Cardinal? Because that's how I want to run things. Everybody wants to run things in their own way. I don't think every GM could do this. But as time goes on, there will be programs across the country at the FCS level, at the Group 5 level, at the Power 4 level that are going to bring in GMs who have that sort of ability. I don't know how many there will be in the short term. I don't think you could bring in a GM at Colorado and fire Deion Sanders. I do think if Alabama brought in a certain GM, he could move on from Kalen DeBoer if he doesn't hit 10 wins this year. That's something that could happen. I think you could see that at several programs across the country. Anyway, so back to the Stanford situation and why it relates to you, college football fan of insert X team. David Bailey is among the most impactful transfers defensively that is in the transfer portal right now or will be in the portal by the time it opens on April 15th. Because April 15th is going to roll around and the spring portal window will open and you'll see all sorts of players go in who have varying degrees of experience and recruiting ratings and transfer ratings and all this sort of stuff. There are no doubts in my mind about David Bailey. I'll have doubts, questions, concerns, thoughts, comments, and all that about anybody that goes in the portal, of course, and we'll be discussing them here on the show, which is why you should subscribe if you haven't already, because there will be plenty of a portal talk come April 15th in the lead up and in the aftermath as well. But David Bailey is somebody who's going into his fourth year of college football. And if your school landed this guy coming out of high school, you would have been stoked. And if you land him out of the transfer portal, you should be stoked. He's going into his fourth season. He was an incredibly highly rated recruit. Once upon a time, Stanford was actually able to recruit high school kids pretty well. They started to dip their toe into the water in the transfer portal more. I suspect that's something Andrew Luck is working on for his now ACC school. But David Bailey had a composite rating on 24/7 of over 97 coming out of high school. He's a borderline 5-star. He had 2.5 sacks his first season, 5 sacks his second year, 7 sacks this past year for the Cardinal in their first year in the ACC. He was a top 70 player nationally. He was the number 7 edge prospect. This is frankly the sort of guy who most people might be surprised that he ever went to Stanford in the modern era of college football, or that he stayed at Stanford as long as he did. But you fire a head coach, you signal a program reset with Andrew Luck in there, and he decides, yeah, this is not the place for me anymore. And so because his coach was fired, he goes into the transfer portal. Will he come out before the window opens? We'll see. I think there's an interesting amount of gamesmanship and strategy for a kid who wants to transfer, who is able to right now, as Stanford is, because when your head coach leaves, no matter the time of year, you have a 30-day window to enter the transfer portal. But remember, most kids can only go in at a certain time. You can come out of the portal whenever you would like. And so he could wind up coming out of the portal before it opens again on April 15th, or he could wait for the craziness to start and maybe the offers fly up. But right now, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a more tangibly impactful player who comes in. He is going to play on Sundays. This is a Sunday player who is in the portal right now. And he just proved over the last couple of years he can be productive in a Power 4, Power 5 conference. So the school that picks him up gets somebody who's got all the physical traits to play in the NFL, who's got the experience, who's got proven production, who has shown growth over the last several years, who's been in the weight room for the last several seasons, and he was at Stanford. You can anticipate absolutely zero off the field issues or concerns here with anything because Stanford only admits a certain kind of kid. David Bailey, therefore, of course, fits that particular bill. So I'm curious to see where he winds up. Haven't seen an offer list yet at this time, but this is going to be one of the biggest defensive linemen that moves in the transfer portal this cycle, unless I really get shocked. But right now, if coaches are looking through their spring portal depth chart and going, I don't love what we have at the edge position, he's an outside guy, but definitely along that defensive line. I don't love what we have at the edge position. They'd be wise to get on the phone, first with their NIL collective leader and say, what do we have available? And then call David Bailey and say, here's what we have available. That's what they should do, of course. Who will? Time will tell. But he's not the only Cardinal player. There are 3 who have gone into the portal. The other one, since Troy Taylor was fired. The other one is Medea Rubin. Now, coming off an injury this past year, that can scare you away. I get it. Medea Rubin at wide receiver is not somebody you should go to and say, hey, he's going to be our number 1 guy. He's going to be our go-to target. I mean, we're going to lean on him to be the alpha of our receiving corps. Nope, I don't think that's what you're getting here. You are, once again, getting a guy who was not as highly recruited coming out of high school as David Bailey was. He was a top 100 wide receiver. Nothing special, but certainly nothing to completely disregard. I've watched this guy play football a good amount over the last couple of years. Yes, the Cardinal have had better wide receivers. He was overshadowed over the last couple of years by this guy named Alec Iomanner, who, of course, is now off to the NFL draft. But Medea Rubin, coming out of high school, top 100 receiver, battled an injury last year. All right, those are not great things, but has been in college for several years. You don't have weight room issues. You don't have off-the-field issues. You maybe have some production issues. I think this is someone you bring in to be a number 2 or number 3 on your receiving corps. He is 6'2", 210 pounds. Very prototypical, big body target. The sort of guy down at Stanford, they train you to do one thing and one thing only if you're a receiver or a tight end. Not only, but perhaps they prioritize this element. You have to be able to win a 50-50 ball. David Shaw was famous for decades. Jim Harbaugh did this too, but Shaw really accentuated over the years. When you get down in the red zone, find a tall guy who's got a big body and just throw him a jump ball, let him box out like he's playing basketball, go up and make the catch. Medea Rubin, big body wide receiver. Again, 6'2", 210. I'd take that. I'd take that if I had the chance. Again, I wouldn't trust him to be a number 1. I think on a good receiving core, he could be a number 2. On a great receiving core, he's number 3. So if you're looking for that sort of guy, and it could be because of an injury, it could be because of a lack of depth, I think he winds up somewhere and can be a solid contributor. But right now, the Stanford guy to keep your eye on, David Bailey. Not the last time his name pops up on this show. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.